Summer 1943. The Pacific sky hung like a sheet of hammered tin, bright enough to make a man squint through his goggles until his eyes watered. Far below, the Solomon Islands were patches of deep green and white coral, ringed by water so blue it seemed painted. Somewhere in that postcard landscape, men were killing each other. And above it all, a strange new sound ripped through the morning, a high-pitched whine that sent a chill down the spines of Japanese pilots before they even saw the source. It looked like a bird with its wings broken, and yet it hunted us, one Zero veteran would later recall. That broken-wing bird was the Chance Vought F-4U Corsair, the most feared fighter of the Pacific War, though no one knew it yet. Its wings bent sharply downward at the root, then swept back up, a design born not from elegance but from necessity, to fit its monster engine and massive propeller. It was a brute in a world that had been ruled by ballet dancers. On the deck of the USS Bunker Hill, Lieutenant Jack Hawk Harrison climbed into his Corsair's cockpit, sweat rolling down his back despite the early hour. At 24, Jack already carried the look of a man who'd aged a decade in a year, crow's feet from squinting into the sun, salt streaking his hair from too many missions over open water. "Beans, you ready?" he said into his throat mic. A voice crackled back through his headset. "Born ready, Hawk. Or at least, ready enough to fake it." Jack grinned despite himself. Tommy Beans Malone, his wingman, had a gift for breaking tension at the worst possible moments, or maybe the best. Nobody was sure how Tommy got the nickname Beans, though the leading theory involved a can opener, a stormy night, and a very angry supply officer. Beneath the ship, engines rumbled, not the purr of machines but the deep-bellied growl of an industrial nation flexing its muscle. Jack reached forward, primed the Corsair's engine, and pushed the starter. The massive Pratt & Whitney Double Wasp coughed once, belched smoke, then roared to life. The whole plane shuddered as if eager to leap into the air. Up until now, the Japanese Zero had been the terror of the Pacific, a flying ghost that danced circles around heavier American planes. Pilots called it invincible. Its thin skin and light frame made it turn like a swallow. But the war was changing. In 1942, the U.S. had lost too many good men. Guadalcanal alone had cost hundreds of planes. And while Japan was running short of fuel, aluminum, and veteran pilots, America's factories were just getting warmed up. The Corsair was the proof. Its 2,000 horsepower engine could push it past 400 miles per hour in level flight, faster than anything Japan had. Its 6.50 caliber machine guns could saw a Zero in half in a 2-second burst. It wasn't graceful, but it was terrifying. Jack taxied into position, heart thudding. The carrier's deck crew gave the signal, and the deck officer dropped his flag. Jack shoved the throttle forward, the Corsair leapt ahead, tail rattling. For a moment it seemed certain they'd run out of deck, but then the big fighter's bent wings bit into the air, lifting her clear of the sea. "She always feels like she's going to kill me before she saves me," Jack muttered under his breath. "Don't worry, Hawk," Tommy cut in. "If she kills you, I'll write something nice on your grave marker. Here lies Hawk, died stylishly." Jack chuckled, banking left to form up. The humor helped. It always did. From 30,000 feet up, the Pacific was endless. Clouds floated like scattered islands. Sunlight hit the Corsair's wings, turning them silver. Ahead lay the Solomon Chain, and enemy fighters. Intelligence had reported Zeros sweeping the area at dawn, hunting for straggling bombers. Today, Jack and Tommy weren't just hunting back, they were carrying a message. The days of Japanese air supremacy were ending. Jack adjusted the trim tab and glanced over his shoulder. Tommy's Corsair held perfect formation, nose slightly high, engine glinting in the sun. "Think they'll be surprised?" Tommy asked. "Oh, I'm counting on it," Jack said. On the other side of the sky, Lieutenant Sadao Ishikawa of the Imperial Japanese Navy was already airborne. His Mitsubishi A6M0 sliced through the air with effortless grace, white Hinomaru markings flashing in the sun. Ishikawa had been flying since the days when Japan ruled the skies over China. He had seen American planes fall like leaves in autumn, slow, clumsy, doomed. He had no reason to think today would be any different. The first contact came a half-hour later, just after sunrise. Tommy spotted them first. 4 zeros glinting against the sun. "Company, 12 o'clock high," he said, voice suddenly taut. Jack squinted, his hand tightening on the stick. Time stretched. Somewhere far below, waves crashed on empty beaches. The world narrowed to sky, sun, and the coming fight. He eased the nose down. The Corsair's engine howled as it picked up speed. And then they were falling, plunging from the sky like hawks on unsuspecting prey. The Zeros hadn't seen them yet. Jack lined up the lead plane in his gun sight, thumb poised on the trigger. "Showtime," he said. 6.50s roared in unison, spitting fire. Tracer rounds ripped through the morning air, and the lead Zero exploded in a ball of orange flame. The others scattered like startled birds. For the first time in the war, the hunters had become the hunted. "They thought we were clumsy, slow," Jack would later write in his logbook. They hadn't met the bent-wing bird yet. The sky over the Solomons erupted like a kicked anthill. Zeros broke formation, spiraling in panic, wings flashing white in the sun. Jack's Corsair rolled hard right, the G-force pinning him against the seat. "Tommy, keep your eyes open," Jack barked over the radio. "Eyes open? Buddy, I think my heart just jumped out of my chest." Jack didn't answer. His gun still smoked from the first kill, the smell of cordite filling the cockpit. Another Zero shot past his canopy, close enough that Jack could see the pilot's white scarf fluttering. The dance of death. Lieutenant Sadao Ishikawa saw the first plane go down and cursed under his breath. These Americans were diving from above, using speed, not turning, to kill. It was a tactic he'd seen before, but never with this kind of machine. He pulled back hard on the stick, turning into the sun. His Zero arced gracefully, almost floating through the air, and for a moment he caught sight of one of the strange bent-wing planes, black, glossy, predatory. It climbed away impossibly fast, its propeller a silver blur. "This is no Wildcat," he thought grimly. Jack nosed down again, his stomach lurching. The Corsair screamed as it dove, wind hammering the canopy. He fired, stitching the sky with red tracers. One burst caught a Zero square in the wing root. The plane disintegrated, spinning into the sea. "Scratch too." Tommy whooped through the headset. But victory came with a price. Another Zero dove on Jack's tail, guns spitting. Bullets punched through the Corsair's right wing. One smashed into the armored glass behind his head, spiderwebbing it. "Damn it!" Jack yanked the stick, kicking the rudder hard. The Corsair rolled, flipped belly up, and dove. The ocean rushed up to meet him, blue, endless, deadly. Steel, fire, and luck. Tommy came screaming down from above, guns blazing. The Zero on Jack's tail exploded in midair, flaming wreckage tumbling past. "You owe me a beer," Tommy shouted. Jack didn't have time to answer. His engine coughed, sputtered, then roared again. He leveled out just 50 feet above the water, spray hitting the canopy. "Beans, I think she's hurt," Jack said, glancing at his oil pressure gauge. The needle danced in the red. "Then let's take her home before she quits on you." But the Zeros weren't finished. The turning tide. Ishikawa led 2 surviving fighters after them, determination hardening into something colder. His country was bleeding, and he knew it. Fuel stocks dwindling, veteran pilots dying faster than they could be replaced. If he could down one of these monsters, it would send a message. He closed the distance fast. Jack's warning light blinked, engine temperature rising. The Corsair was a racehorse running out of breath. "Tommy, I can't outrun them," Jack said. "You don't have to. Climb with me." Jack grimaced but pulled back on the stick. The Corsair clawed for altitude. G-force pressed him into the seat, the nose shuddering. The Japanese pilots followed, but their lighter engines couldn't keep pace. Jack rolled over the top, coming down behind them. His finger squeezed the trigger. 6.50s spat fire. The tracers tore through the trailing Zero, which erupted into flames and nosedived into the sea. The hunter becomes the hunted. Only Ishikawa remained. He twisted his Zero in a desperate brake turn, pulling GS until his vision grayed. Somehow he escaped Jack's sights, only to find Tommy diving in from above. The sky turned into a deadly waltz, Corsair and Zero, circling, rolling, each trying to get the other into the gunsight. Jack felt sweat run down his neck. His ammo counter was dropping fast. "This guy's good," he muttered. "He's not that good," Tommy said, banking hard. But Ishikawa was that good. He rolled under Tommy's attack, pulling up behind him, and suddenly Tommy was the hunted. "Beans, break left," Jack shouted. Tommy broke left. The Zero followed, right into Jack's line of fire. Jack squeezed the trigger, but the Corsair's guns clicked empty. The near-death spiral. A burst from Ishikawa's guns ripped through Jack's wing, smoke trailing. The Corsair bucked violently. Jack's engine sputtered, then coughed. He was losing power. "Ditch, Hawk. Ditch." Tommy's voice was raw over the radio. Jack leveled off, scanning frantically for somewhere to put her down. The jungle-covered island ahead was a death trap. The beach looked too short. But the ocean would kill him slower. Jack yanked the canopy release, the cockpit filling with salt air. He dropped altitude, skimming just above the waves. The propeller screamed like a banshee. Then the engine gave one last cough and died. The Corsair hit the water belly first, skipping once, twice, before settling in a spray of foam. Jack's harness bit into his shoulders as the plane lurched to a stop. He fumbled with the straps, popped the canopy, and climbed out into the warm Pacific, just as his plane began to sink. Behind him, the sky was still full of roaring engines. Jack floated in the water, parachute pack keeping him buoyant. His plane vanished beneath the waves. He could still hear Tommy shouting over the radio, somewhere far above. "Hold on, Hawk. I'm coming back for you." But Jack knew better than to hope too soon. The Zeros were still out there. Above the waves, Ishikawa's Zero circled once, its engine growling. For a moment, Jack thought he might strafe him. Instead, the Japanese pilot dipped his wings in salute, then turned back toward the rising sun. Jack lay there, chest heaving, salt stinging his eyes. The battle was over. The war was not. The Pacific was too quiet after a dogfight. Jack floated alone, heart hammering, breath coming in ragged gulps. The sea rolled him like a piece of driftwood. Oil from his Corsair spread in a dark rainbow across the waves, smelling of burned metal and near death. Far away, gunfire popped faintly, then faded. He paddled for the nearest island, every muscle screaming. Saltwater stung the cuts on his face. Each stroke felt slower than the last. The sun climbed higher, turning the water into blinding mirrors. When he finally felt sand under his boots, he collapsed on the beach, coughing, grateful just to be on something that didn't move. Jungle loomed ahead, a green wall alive with insects and the heavy smell of rot. Jack dragged himself to the tree line for cover. The Corsair was gone, swallowed by the sea. He was alone, soaked, and somewhere behind enemy lines. He crawled deeper into the foliage, every step crunching with dead leaves. Somewhere nearby a bird shrieked, mocking him. He found a spot under a banyan tree and sat with his back against it, sweat drying sticky on his skin. Hours passed. A Japanese patrol appeared on the beach, 3 soldiers with rifles, scanning the waterline. Jack held his breath until his chest burned. The soldiers left eventually, their voices fading into the distance. He waited longer still, just in case. Night came like someone turning down the lights. The jungle hummed with frogs and cicadas, and mosquitoes found him immediately. He dared not light a fire, so he sat in the dark and listened, to the insects, to the distant drone of engines, to his own heart thudding. At dawn, a voice whispered through the foliage, "You planning to sit there until the war ends, or are you coming with me?" Jack spun around, ready to fight, but what stepped out of the greenery wasn't a soldier. It was a sunburned man in ragged khakis with a week's worth of beard and a rifle slung over his shoulder. "Edward Stevens," the stranger said. "But everyone just calls me Ned. Coast Watcher." Jack blinked, still processing. I thought you guys were a myth. Ned grinned, showing a flash of white teeth. Oh, we're very real. And right now you're very lucky. Ned led him inland through trails barely wider than a snake track. They moved silently, crouched low, avoiding open ground. Once they lay flat while a column of Japanese soldiers passed within spitting distance. Jack's mouth filled with a copper taste of fear. They reached a hut hidden beneath palm fronds. Ned handed Jack a canteen. The water tasted like heaven. You're not the first pilot I've pulled out of the drink, Ned said. But you might be the loudest. Half the island probably heard you crash. Jack managed a thin grin. Thanks for the hospitality. Ned's grin faded. You won't be thanking me if we don't get you out of here soon. They'll be back. For 2 days Jack stayed in hiding, surviving on tinned meat and coconuts, sleeping under mosquito nets, listening to distant gunfire and aircraft passing overhead. He cleaned his sidearm until it gleamed, more for something to do than because he expected to use it. Each night he thought of Tommy, if he made it back, if he knew Jack was alive, if the Navy would even bother looking. On the third night, the sound of engines came closer, not Japanese, but a slow, throaty rumble Jack recognized instantly. Catalina, he said, heart leaping. Rescue bird, Ned confirmed. But she won't wait long. They moved quickly through the jungle toward the coast. When they reached the beach, the PBY Catalina was already landing in the lagoon, its hull kicking up spray. Japanese tracers arced across the night sky from somewhere inland, green sparks chasing them. Go! Ned shouted, shoving him toward the water. Jack ran, splashing through the surf, firing a few wild shots back just to keep heads down. Bullets cracked overhead. He dove for the Catalina's hatch and strong hands hauled him aboard. Inside, the smell of oil and wet canvas filled his nose. The crew shouted to each other over the roar of the engines. The plane began to turn, its hull slapping waves as it picked up speed. More tracers sliced the night. One punched through the fuselage, sending splinters flying. Jack laughed, half from relief, half from the insanity of it all. As they lifted off, he looked back one last time. The jungle glowed faintly with muzzle flashes, but the beach was empty. Somewhere out there, Ned was already melting back into the trees, ready to save the next poor pilot. As the Catalina climbed, Jack caught a glimpse of a single Zero far off, silhouetted against the moon, watching. It didn't fire. It didn't follow. Jack stared at it until it turned away and vanished into the clouds. He sat back against the bulkhead, soaked and shivering but alive. The battle had taken his plane, nearly his life, but not his fight. Tomorrow, he knew, he'd be back in another Corsair, engines screaming, diving into the sky. Dawn broke over the Philippine Sea like a blade drawn across silk. The deck of the USS Bunker Hill throbbed with noise, engines warming, boots clattering, the salty wind whipping the stars and stripes. Jack stood beside his new Corsair, helmet under his arm. The plane gleamed dark blue, fresh from the factory, as though it hadn't yet learned fear. Tommy joined him, grinning. They gave you a prettier bird this time. Try not to drown her. Jack smiled faintly, but there was a weight behind it. Guadalcanal, the crash, Ned's quiet courage, all of it had stripped away the boy he'd been. He climbed into the cockpit, strapped in, and ran through the checklist by muscle memory. Today wasn't just another mission. It was the strike on Truk Lagoon, Japan's great fortress. The Navy called it Operation Hailstone. The pilots called it the day the sky would fall. When the flag dropped, the Corsairs leapt from the deck like wolves loosed from a pen. The sun rose higher, turning the ocean into a sheet of molten copper. Hours later, the lagoon came into view, a glittering jewel ringed by coral, now crawling with Japanese ships and planes scrambling to take off. Smoke already coiled from fuel dumps hit by the first wave of bombers. Anti-aircraft fire stitched the sky with black puffs. Jack pushed the throttle to the stop. The Corsair screamed forward, nose pointed at the enemy airfield. His 6.50s spat fire, tearing into a line of parked planes. Explosions lit the ground, smoke mushrooming upward. Then the enemy rose to meet them. Zeros burst from the clouds like a swarm of hornets. Among them was Ishikawa. He recognized the bent-wing silhouettes instantly. This was it. The duel the war seemed to have been saving for them. Jack rolled left, dove, then climbed hard, pulling GS until his ribs ached. Ishikawa followed, closing the gap. Their dance began again, this time with dozens of planes wheeling and spinning around them, a sky full of chaos. Tommy cut across Ishikawa's path, forcing him to break away. Jack looped around and came down from above, guns lined up on the Zero's tail. He hesitated. For a fraction of a second, he saw not a target but a man. The same man who had dipped his wings instead of killing him. Ishikawa rolled just in time. Jack's burst missed, cutting through empty sky. They twisted, turned, and dove again, locked in a duel that felt older than the war itself, predator and prey changing places by the second. Jack's engine roared like an animal. The Corsair shuddered as he pulled up into a high yo-yo turn, dropping back behind the Zero. Ishikawa tried one last barrel roll, but the heavier, faster Corsair stayed with him. Jack lined him up again, finger tightening on the trigger. And then he let go. He yanked the stick, pulling the Corsair off target. The tracers went wide. Ishikawa leveled out, stunned. For a long, suspended moment, the two planes flew side by side, no more than 50 yards apart. Jack could see the Japanese pilot's face behind the glass, pale and sweat-slick. Jack raised one hand from the stick and gave the smallest nod. Ishikawa dipped his wings, just as he had months ago over the Solomons, then banked hard and dove for the clouds, vanishing into the smoke and chaos. Jack climbed back toward the carrier group, heart pounding. The battle lasted hours. When it was over, Truk Lagoon burned. Over 40 Japanese ships lay sinking or shattered, hundreds of planes destroyed. The once proud stronghold had been turned into a graveyard. Jack landed on the carrier just before sunset. The deck was littered with spent shells and the smell of hot oil. Tommy was already there, helmet off, sweat plastering his hair. "You missed him on purpose, didn't you?" Tommy said quietly. Jack didn't answer at first. He unstrapped, climbed down from the cockpit, and stood on the deck, feeling it vibrate under his boots as the ship cut through the waves. "I guess I did," he said finally. Tommy nodded, not pressing. They stood together, watching the sun sink into the ocean, turning the waves blood-red. Smoke still rose on the horizon, the last breath of Truk. Jack thought of Ishikawa somewhere out there, alive. Maybe still flying. Maybe thinking the same thing. The war would go on. More raids, more dogfights, more men swallowed by the sea. But for one moment, two pilots had chosen something other than death. Jack looked at his Corsair, still ticking as the engine cooled, its bent wings silhouetted against the fiery sky. The bent-wing bird had sung its song again, not just of death, but of survival, of the strange fraternity born in battle. And the Pacific, vast and glittering, seemed to sing it back.